Hello, everybody. Welcome to Live Scribbles with Jonathan. You can check out my website and my work at jonathanrector.com. And I just wanted to make the quick announcement, well, two in the beginning here, just for those that are in the chat. Thank you for coming in for the pre-show and being here tonight. And if you're on YouTube, if you're interested in catching the show live, this one anyway, it's every Wednesday from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I do try to do some more streams throughout the week. And I'd say probably next week they should start ramping up a little bit more. So if you're interested in that, there should be a link down below on YouTube here, and you can just follow that there to subscribe to me on Picarto, or yeah, Picarto. But on Patreon, just a quick update. I made a post yesterday, and some of you may have heard it. If not, that's cool. I will be announcing it every week. Or every stream, I should say, until next month. I'm going to be revamping the Patreon site as well. I'm going to be removing quite a bit of what's on there and changing it up more to well, I'm not quite sure what the word, like the term for it would be, but more of like a sort of treating it like a private art blog in a way. So I'm looking, and this is just off the top of my head here. I will be finalizing and let you guys know soon, but daily posts, usually art related or just what's going on and stuff like that. All art related content, regardless. And then I'll be also doing a Patreon specific video that'll only be available for patrons as well. I'll do one of those once a month. And the big one is going to be the big focus on doing comic book work and sharing that with you guys, like process and stuff. Now, anybody that's followed me at all, you guys know exactly how my mind scatters everywhere. I think I've finally figured out or found a way that seems comfortable in the type of creator I am. I've fought with being this kind of guy or this kind of creator for a very long time, and it's definitely a negative. And it comes to personal projects. Client work is different, right? Client work you're getting paid for, and it's a specific job, and you usually have a deadline, and you do your best to hit it. But for private or personal work, I should say, I jump around a lot because new things are always coming in, and things are always fresh and energizing at the beginning of a project, at least for me. So there's a writer that I follow, one of my favorite fantasy writers in a very long time, Brandon Sanderson. If you guys ever read Mistborn or Steelheart, perhaps, any of those books, what he does, and I thought it was just very interesting, and it didn't really click until I tried to apply a comic book sense to it, which is just creating content that's good for you in a way, right? So, meaning, let's say for Castle Dracula, I'll release issue 1. Most likely, I'll be doing them in issues. But once that's done, the thing that's not necessarily scary, but does hold me back because I feel like I need to make scripts better than they are, or whatever, right? But it's like, well, how big does that project have to be? And they always default to like a graphic novel or at least a few issues and things, right? So it's a bigger project. So with this new, not really new method, but a method that works for me, which is doing not multiple projects at a time, but one project at a time. And that doesn't mean finishing a complete project at a time. That just means, so let's say Castle Dracula issue 1's done. And once that's done, then I can sort of go like, okay, well, what do I want to do next? Maybe I want to keep going, right? You can do issue 2. Or maybe we can do Guildborn. We can start an issue of that. And then once that's done, maybe come back to Castle Dracula, you know? The idea of that is actually very exciting to me. And I just wanted to share it with you guys just to give you an update. I don't want to ramble too much on that because that is where I'll be shifting all the Patreon focus as well. So if you guys are interested in that, just keep your ears open. I'll keep posting updates and keep you guys in the loop. I should probably just, so you guys have a face, not just a chest here. We were doing a little bit of Mr. Sinister, one of my favorite villains of Marvel X-Men universe sort of stuff. But okay, so this episode here, the room was a little short today, so I'm not sure. It's supposed to be a critique episode. So if you guys have any art that you like critique, by all means, please jam it right into the chat at any time during any of this ramble that I'm doing. And this is for you guys. You guys apparently, I went back and checked the YouTube page for the last video, and you guys seem to dig it a lot. So if there is anybody here that's interested in that, that's cool. If there's not, I'm just going to continue just doing some sketching, and we'll chit chat about projects, things that are going on, and stuff like that. And by all means, if nobody does have any things that need critiqued or would like critique, that's cool as well. But feel free to ask questions as well. So I would recommend just putting it all in capitals. That way I can just quickly glance over at the chat, and we can go from there. So I'm just going to continue inking until we hear back. So this stuff is just normally what we do during the pre-show, right? Just pick a character and kind of draw them. I'm not really worrying about like the most sexy art in this stuff. So there's a lot of like slop going on with these black shadows and stuff like that. I'm playing it pretty safe here with the face. I don't want to put too much shadow on there. Just want to put a little bit of rendering. But let's go ahead and we'll toss the back here. I don't know if we're gonna, let's see what it looks like. It's all solid black. I mean, that's Mr. Sinister, man. That's some good stuff. Maybe we can bring in some white rendering here. I'm not quite sure where it would feel or where it would fit. Let's just bring the brush a little bigger. Just kind of tighten up those pinch points there. Just zoom out just to take a look. I mean, it adds some stuff going on over there. I don't even, you know what? Let's just kill it. We don't need it. The black just looks fine as is. Thanks, Noah. Yeah, Noah's saying it frames his head nicely, and it totally does. I would recommend you guys check out, just do if you're interested in this kind of guy. This kind of design. I have no idea who designed them, but like these sort of like they look like ribbons, but I imagine them to be like that, like a bendy metal sort of thing that he's got in his costume. I don't even know what kind of element that is, where you'd even look to come up with something like that. But I find a lot of these like. And I apologize if he was done earlier, but he feels like a 90s character. But a lot of these characters, it's like they just the last couple weeks, we've been talking about. Oh, Mark Silvestri, that might explain it. Last couple of weeks, we've been talking about character design and stuff for Castle Dracula, which we'll do a little bit today, if there's no critiques today. But a lot of them, it's like I'm not saying that he's a poorly designed character or anything like that at all, because it's all preference and taste, right? There's no badly designed anything. I think there are some rules that might help a design, but even that's all subjective, right? But these sort of designs here, even like anything Kirby, like the balls that it took to just like come up with some of this stuff is just, it's inspirational, man. Because I don't know about you guys, but sometimes it's like you'll read a whole bunch of anatomy books or just instruction books or looking at other people's art books and stuff. And once you read them, there's like rules or something like that gets sort of established. It definitely is there for excuse me, like anatomy books, right? Like a lot of people like to show you how to do anatomy in stages or steps and stuff, and that's great. But what ends up happening is usually, not always, but usually that's sort of like your box that you work in, right? Just doing that sort of thing. And then when you want to start drawing something radically different, it's hard. Like you just don't understand it, or you just don't know how to work around it. And I find a lot of people, myself included, have a lot of difficulties going from like, let's say, learning to draw anatomy from Loomis, or even we'll just sort of say like a comic book style, and then trying to do cartoons. And the other way around too. I find a lot of people that do cartoons and they try to get something that's a little bit more stiff, like a comic book style, like a Marvel DC sort of house style, we'll say, like an older house style. It's so hard to do because like what I'm doing right here, like all this rendering and stuff, you wouldn't really necessarily do in a cartoon, right? Because the more lines, the more detail you add onto something, the human eye tends to want to look at it, which slows it down, right? And animation tends to be about life, and life's generally not slow, slow and like not moving. That's death. That's if it's not moving, it's dead. So where a lot of life comes into. That's why there's a lot of artists that you might look at their stuff and there's just some beautiful looking lines, and it's not really render lines that they're doing, right? It's just line efficiency and stuff. Noah's saying I finally finished Captain America comic for New York. Finally have free time again. Well, congratulations, Noah. I wish you the best when you go to New York. I hope you get some solid feedback. And you get a few business cards that people want to keep in contact with you. That'd be pretty sweet. When is New York, by the way? It can't be next weekend. Or it could be, but I can't imagine it is. Holy hell. Okay, so in Canada, I don't remember it being like this last year. Maybe it's just the way it worked. In Canada, on Monday is Thanksgiving. Now that would make a really awkward weekend. The only reason I bring that up is because it's just I remember going. I think, well, man, would it be 3 years now? Maybe 2 years ago I went somewhere around there, and that just seems whoa. Has it? Oh my god! Like, okay, I'll take your word for you. I'll take your word. All right, I'm not going to keep going here with Mr. Sinister. We'll jump on to something else. If there's no critiques today, maybe you guys will throw it back to like some old school style stuff. Is there anything, anybody in the chat, that you guys might need help drawing, or like some questions about comics or something I might be able to help you with? Anatomy? I want to keep this episode totally for whatever you guys are like. If you guys just want to watch me draw, we can do that too. Just want to try doing one quick thing here. There's always one quick thing to do, right? Oops. I'm gonna bind this one here. Just want to put a little gray. Yeah. Put this up, multiply. How many layers did I make here? There we go. Make it pop off the page here. That's just for me. It's not. Okay. Oh, we got some really complicated ones that I will not be good at. How to do feet in front view. I can try. I'm not. My feet are horrible. I need practice as well. But sure, I can embarrass myself here with you guys. And James is saying how to render a male face. Okay, so we'll start with the tough one, the feet, and then we'll jump into a head. All right. So let me just group all this together here. Grab a red pencil. All right. So bear with me here. So how to draw feet in front view. So excuse me. So the way the feet go, I always like to start with two things. I treat it very much like an arm. So when I draw arms, there's two things that are pretty important to me, and even hands in general. If you can see it, definitely the wrist bone, right? The wrist bone is very important, especially the one that's sticking out towards your pinky side, as well as the elbow. I find those two are very important when you're drawing the arm, especially if the hand's there as well, right? Like it's not cut off. But like if you hold where you're like press your thumb into your bone in your wrist, if you can sort of with your pinky reach, I know it's gonna be a far stretch, but sort of feel like where your elbow is, and it feels like there's a twist going on in there, right? So when I like to draw the arm, those are 2 points that I always like to remember where things are. For feet, and the reason I bring this up is because there's two things that I like to think of for the foot, or the legs in general, right? Where your knee or whatever is going to come, and it does, this is all straight on, where it bends in, like it warps, you know? And so the knee is pretty important, and the ankle are pretty important because they contrast, they form like a shape like this to have some balance, okay? So when you have your knee and then your shin bones coming in like this into your ankle, right? And what this does is you can tell it adds like this, it looks like a bend in here. So if something was walking, there's like a spring, there's some life going on in there, right? And then from here, right, like this is where you can go straight into like a simple triangle for a foot or whatever. And what this does is it gives your ankles this sort of look, and that's why that bone's actually pretty important, at least for me, because it gives me that angle is very important, because from here you can start breaking apart your foot, right? Like just by adding this little shape here, I can curve it in like this and into a point, and this is just very primitive stuff here. And then, you know, your heel will kind of stick out like that. Now, this might not be practical, you know, like trying to figure out how to draw this in different angles and stuff. What I like to do anyway is keep everything as basic as possible and then try to break it down. I still struggle a lot with the foot. The foot's not necessarily something that usually has a lot of attention drawn to it, but you can definitely tell when people like to show off their foot drawing skills. When you see like people draw Spider-Man or something and the foot's coming right at you, and it looks good. It doesn't like the foot's not coming at you, and it's like some lines in like this, and there's your foot kind of coming at you. Like that's nothing. But when they start getting like they're really pushing foreshortening and really bending up, like a lot of the toes and stuff like when they start really trying it. I don't know, for me anyway, it always looks like it's actually very impressive. Possibly because I struggle with it so much. So let's try to do a little practical stuff here. I'm gonna assume you're not just drawing legs and feet, so let's get some hips in here. I don't want to draw the Loomis hips, but it might just be a little easier for now. So I'll keep it pretty basic, and I mean this is pretty drastic here, but we know the cone shapes I like to talk about. Okay, and again, we got that arc in there, so I'll just throw them in. Even if you might not be able to see the actual ankle bone, I'll put it in there. It just helps me understand it. And then from here, I can just really sort of just plant this shape in there and sneak a heel in. And again, like it looks pretty drastic in there. Let's grab our ink so we can see it. So this area here is pretty important. You can like add a bunch of rendering or whatever. And feel free to look at your own feet too, right? Like I'm putting a pretty solid arch on here. Like it's really arched up. And I know they're not like hands, but for whatever reason I always add, it looks like a knuckle in all of them. And even though this triangle is kind of coming up, here's sometimes, I know it really wouldn't look here, but the one toe is there, and then they all just start curling in on each other. And you can see how poor this looks here. I'm just trying to add some lines here to help show bending. I'm actually going to curl this in. Let's just erase this here. I'm going to curl this side in a little bit more. It's starting to look a little fat. I'm just going to hint that bone's there. And this bone here, I'm going to connect in here so that the heel goes behind it. Right? Then you can kind of come up and go into your knees and whatever you want to do. So that's generally how I work, and I can tell right now just by looking at this. Like, let's flip it. Should stick out like a sore thumb here. Like this ankle looks pretty big. So anyway, keep practicing, keep doing what you're doing. I'm doing it as well, but hopefully that helped you. Once again, so figure out where the tilt of the ankle is, right? And then I like to use this straight line, like this. This is the shape I'm looking for, and this is pretty much like, whoops, back here would be where you're, like, let's say that's your horizon line, if you want to do it that way. And you can bring your heel back here as well. And then by doing this, you can actually get your toes kind of come in here. And this might actually be a better way for you to do it instead of me just like throwing it out there. Put like some flooring down, right? Like the way this floor is looking, it's kind of like at an angle. Here it's like flat, so everything squishes when it gets down there, right? Like you get the meat and all that stuff like that. Okay, so hopefully that helped you out there. So what was the next one there? How to render a male face. Okay, when you're talking about how to render male face, are you talking like literal render or just how to like draw a male face? Maybe you did ask. I'm wondering what areas to concentrate on when rendering and which. Okay, cool. So you got that. Oh, no problem, Pillow. Hopefully that helped you. Hey, welcome to the chat on. All right, so rendering is such a a touchy subject because it's whoever's doing it Yeah, what's a better way of what I'm trying to say here? So, depending on the style, some people render the shit out of everything. Let's say you're Bernie Wrightson. If you guys haven't seen his stuff, very rendered, beautiful artwork, very beautiful artwork. Even Arthur Adams, he doesn't really over render anything that's flesh. Usually costumes and stuff, he'll add a whole shitload of lines. And I'm not saying it's over rendering at all. It's just a style. Whereas if you were to put, let's pick, I don't know, someone's got a pretty open style. I can't think of any right now. Next to him, the rendering is so different that it's you, it's your choice, right? So what I'm gonna try to do is Corey Walker. Thank you, Corey Walker is a beautiful example, wonderful artist. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna try to do like just my stuff, and I guess that's probably the best way to do it. Millennium Man, thank you. I will definitely do that next. Just so you guys know, would like more tips on laying out a page. This is page 2 from last month. Okay, so we can definitely go over that as well. Corey Walker is the polar opposite of Arthur Adams. Definitely is. All right, so okay, faces. Well, first we're gonna need a face. So let's get a generic face in here. And for those of you that don't know what rendering is, I suppose we can kind of talk about that now. So rendering is, or at least how I will be addressing rendering, and I'm hoping this is what you're asking too. So let's make him smile so he's not total douchebag. All right, so let's say I was coloring with like a brush or something, right? Right now when I ink, it's this. It's black and white. Imagine that's black, okay? There's no gray, like no gradient. But when I go like this with a pressure sensitivity, right? So it's getting lighter or a paintbrush or something. That's like it's like a transition to gray, like a blend to gray, right? Now, one of the reasons why I would assume rendering, which is to replace this gradient with line art, is when things started to become made for print. When something is sent to print, if you were to print from a printer, black and white printer, right, it can print gray, but when you were adding color to that, it gets washed out, and it's not good. It actually looks pretty bad. So what you do with rendering is it helps give that illusion of bended space, or easiest way to think about it is like a foreshortened arm. Somebody punching straight at the camera. The light and shadow is the only way you're going to tell how something is pushed into space. And with rendering, you can use line art to make those gray areas, those transitions from light to shadow, and really, really push shape. And it's very important to know, even if we're talking about Corey Walker, that's not as rendered. There's definitely, it's something that I would recommend that you all study at some point so that you can add it to your work if you like it. Most people I find, once they understand rendering, they like to incorporate it, whether it's an insane amount or just like, again, Corey Walker, but there is a little bit of rendering in there as well, just to help sell that illusion. Okay, so that's what rendering is. Now, in context of this, the question that the way I'm understanding it is that it's at what point is too much going on here, right? So we're gonna have a face. Let's get some ink on him. Now, what I'm gonna do with this is the inking I'm doing is I'm gonna try my best to not have any too much line weight going on, and I'm just gonna kind of draw it practical here because I'm gonna show you guys just sort of like how lighting might affect a figure in different ways. Alright. Give a little cheekbone action. That'll help. I'm not going to do hair right here. Doesn't really matter. That's a lie. It does matter, but for the sake of this, let's not worry about it. Okay, so we got our head in here, and let's turn that off. Okay, so we can do another pass. So, actually, let's do red. Let's put that on. So, rendering, what it would do is just whatever you want to do. So the easiest way, it's so hard to talk about this, sorry guys, as I'm trying to draw it. So figure out the number one thing. The number one thing is always, 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 always have a light source. If you're not thinking about light at all when you're drawing, you're giving yourself such a huge disadvantage. And if you want to do things like add rendering and you might feel like it's turning out like shit, like you were saying, it may just be because you're not giving lighting a chance. Now, lighting doesn't mean that there has to be shadow, right? Lighting could just be that there's just a slight gradient into your style, which is what I'm going to do here, okay? I'm not going to do heavy blacks. If we're going to put heavy black work in there, I mean, you could totally understand it anywhere else. And Unsung is saying a great thing. I'll actually put that down here. And we'll do that. Actually do that first, and then I'll show you how we'd apply it there. Thanks, Unsung. So he's talking about putting it on like basic forms here, okay? And this is probably a really good example just to show the principle of what we're doing here, okay? So I'm going to have that. Now, what I wanted to show was with red, I recommend doing this if you guys do this digital. If you guys don't do this digital and you do it with like traditional real tools, just grab a piece of paper on the side and very quickly hammer out a shape. Like this guy's head is like a box or something, right? Just throw that down on a piece of paper beside you and just quickly scribble in where the shadow would be. And just leave that as reference beside you so that when you go to apply it to the work that you're doing, it can be done. If you're doing it digital, what I just did is just made a layer underneath the line art. And we're going to apply just a color, right? Not pressure sensitivity. Just think of this again as black and white or gray. I'm using red to help my brain understand where the shadow is going to go. So let's keep it simple. And we'll just do the light coming from the top right here, right? So this would be a simple, so you can usually see this really easy as soon as you do this, right? Like all of a sudden, oh, okay, I get it. That's where the light's hitting. Okay, right? That's it. As long as you know that, what's that? Sorry, James, I'm just my shapes are fine, but I have no idea where to start when doing something like a face. Okay, yeah. So it's how do you like put these together, which is, we'll do the face next here. So I'm going to lower the opacity so we can still kind of see it. And let's get our pressure sensitive brush for inking. And for rendering, you actually don't need pressure sensitivity. You can just use like a flat micron if you use normal pens and stuff. I find pressure sensitivity tends to have a little bit of a, like it feels a little better. So it's just what we're going to use here. So basic shapes here. Remember, I can't just go, don't ever do straight lines like this unless you're working on the box, which we'll get to, right? Because if you can tell, once we get down to the bottom here, like, and we're continuing it, look what's just happened. We've told our brain with this curve here that this is a shape that has volume in it, just like a ball. Never do this. Never, ever do this. Because what this is doing is it's cheating yourself into flattening something that needs to have shape. And the whole point, again, I've talked about this before, is to be a good artist, you sort of have to be a magician in a way. You have to sell an illusion, something that's not real. We're working with a piece of paper that's flat as F. And as soon as you start throwing lines down, it's still flat as F until you start adding some shadow, some light. You need the light to make it pop. That's all it is, okay? So please don't ever do this unless the forms you're working with are this. It's a flat surface. This surface, I'm going to just draw the grid actually, and that'll help you guys out big time here. And I recommend doing practices of this as well. We can do it on the face too. And I'll actually just put it green. Is make a grid as if this was like a 3D program. Okay? So I'm going to continue on with this volume. That this sphere, we've already given this sphere just by putting this line in here, right? So lines are going to go straight down. Just like that. Sphere, alright, we'll say the horizon's here. And this might take work for some of you guys, you know, like you might not understand perspective and all that stuff. And this is an easy way to break down some of these basics and fundamentals. Because really, if this is all rendering really is, guys, if you're able to apply this sort of thing to any shape, even the face we're going to do next, you'll see. Even if it's not perfect, it'll definitely help you out, okay? So this is sort of the thinking. You know, when you're first studying this stuff, definitely try this on scrap pieces of paper and all that. But this is like what I'm intuitively thinking about. And sometimes stuff gets really difficult. And the only way I can figure it out is to actually do this. You guys might not see it a lot. In private work, I do this sometimes as well. So now that I've added that grid, now hopefully you can kind of see where your rendering is going to go, right? Like I'm just, as long as I follow the grid with this rendering, it'll always feel right. Now what I'm doing here is going light to thick, like light pressure sensitivity here to thicker. And what that does is it gives the line some thin to thick. Now the reason you do that is because the thinner it is closer to the light source. And the thicker it is, it's going into shadow, right? Like if I were to just go like this, just to thicken up that edge, this is sort of how the rendering would look, okay? I'm not going for beautiful line arts here. I'm just trying to show you guys an understanding of it. And the other thing this does show you, this method, as soon as you start thinking of light, is you start to apply line weight. And line weight is massive. It's very important. Even if you don't do any of this stuff, but line weight for sure. Like right away, look at these shapes, right? Like they pop right away. Like now that has weight regardless of anything happening there. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to just, I'm going to apply a little bit more. I'm going to go thick, thin, thick. Because the shadow's still there. Thin, thick. There's shadows coming in here. Okay. And sometimes people do, what's it called? Like a second pass of rendering just to give it even more shape to really sell it, right? So again, if I were to just, here, let me put it on a second layer here. If I was to just continue what we were just doing. And there's different styles of rendering. So by all means, please, 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 and you should be doing this, everybody, no matter what level of art you're at right now, look at other artists, the way they draw. It's very important. Because some people are going to show you things like some people, this kind of rendering is fine, but what they'll do is they'll end up just going this. I do this too. You just put like little points that's sort of like it's like lights affecting it and it's breaking it apart, right? But it adds like a cool look to it. That's like a style sort of thing that you're throwing into it, right? Now the cubes always suck to render, to be honest with you, because it's like, well, how much rendering do you put on here? Because like if you just go like this, straight lines, it works, you know. And if you want, you can go here too. Some people will even go diagonal just to really darken it up. And that's what you're doing is it's kind of like half tones. You're just breaking it up, okay? So that's the general methodology there. So what we'll do is let's go back to the green. Where was that guy? Right here. Okay. And what we'll do is I'm just going to sort of put in the rendering that I think would be there. And this won't be 100% correct. But what the hell, let's learn. So what I like to do is find certain areas because this is a complex object. I don't know what's going on, but I know that there's ways to find areas that match up, right? So I know in between the eyes is the symmetrical part, in between the head, right? The middle of the nose, the middle of the lips, the middle of the chin. All of this line has to connect. Let me just turn the opacity up here so you guys can see it a little better. Those all have to connect because that's the front. If there was a line that divided the head, that is it. Right down the middle, right? And I know it's going to curve up around here. So we can go ahead and just curve it in. Now you're going to notice we're going to get some really cool shapes. Like this caves in. This is all like, you're going to have to study this stuff regardless. So lips come up and they come down here. Let me just erase that here. So they come up and the lips go down. They come back out. It goes down the bottom of your lip. It goes down and goes into the chin. It comes up there, right? So now we've just divided the head in halves. Now again, you might not need to necessarily know this for rendering purposes, but this will help you when you need to, if you're stuck on what direction to add rendering, okay? So again, to find this, the other side of the plane of the head, the chin, or the jaw, actually, if you were to draw a straight line, just divides like that. You guys have all seen this in Loomis books, most likely. And I'm most likely making this complex by adding like all these divots and stuff like that, but what are you going to do? So let's go ahead and I'm just going to sort of fill this in. Let's start on this side here just to make it a little easier. So it's going to come in, wrap around the eyeball. I'm kind of trying to, in my head here, feel this stuff. I'm not trying to make it perfect, but And in today's technology and stuff like that, like there's tons of 3D programs out there. I've never really downloaded them too much, but there is definitely something to be said. Excuse me, of just getting like a free program. I think what's the one that a lot of people use? What is that called? You guys might know what it's talking about. A lot of people they'll use it to it's like a blender. Thank you, Inkbot. Blender. Get Blender. Try it out. It can even do chunks of planes, like to break it down into squares, so you can see how light actually hits it and stuff. Anyway, let's keep this going. So what I'll do is I'm going to do the exact same thing. Is we're just going to go straight across because we're going to divide the eyes, and the forehead's still going to follow that same line here, and it's going to come back, and you can even go from jawbone. And you can see what's kind of happening here. You can see where your horizon line and stuff is. I'm just getting a little sloppy with it now because I don't want to spend too much time with this. All this will just start fading up back here. But this is like the general idea, right? So we got a grid. Let's just lower the opacity here, right? So this is what our brain is trying to think about, or hopefully you're able to think about. But the most important part is this here, is the shading. Okay, so let's pick a spot. I know this is a really long way to just get into basic rendering, but we're going to just go like, again, the sun's coming from the top right. So inside your eye socket down here, so that your eyes don't get blind. There's going to be shade hitting there. Underneath your nose. And I'm hoping you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just putting basics here. A lot of observing light and stuff will help you with this. And you don't have to overly complicate things, right? Like, not everybody has to be like a David Finch. Not that there's anything wrong with that style at all. It's very dramatic and bold. If that's the style you're looking for, by all means, check out people that draw like that. And all under here would be blah, 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 blah. We're just going to worry about the face. So that's more than enough that I would say that would be what you would need to get some solid rendering down. So let's lower the opacity on that. Now, what I'll do, just make sure my lines aren't all getting everywhere. So I would always have line weight, okay? Because line weights, it's going to help your rendering no matter what. So lights come from the top, so that means anything below the light is going to get hit. So we stop here because the chin is not where the light is. The cheek, right? So up at the top here is light, but it's going to get heavier down here as it goes into the shadow. Same with the cheekbone, right? Underneath the nose. And you can get finessed with some of this stuff. The lips are your call. Some people like to add shadow to it, some don't. I'm going to put shadow under there. I'm going to put shadow underneath the eyebrow. Right, underneath the eyes down here. And this would be the basic stuff. You could walk away with excuse me, you could walk away with just that and you'd be fine. Right? Like if you look at this, like you could understand where the light is anyway in that form. But to add the rendering that we want just a little bit, since we have this stuff, again, it's the exact same stuff we're doing, right? So with your mouth, you're trying to follow those planes that all that rendering is. Now, this is where it gets a little weird, right? Because if you're to do rendering like this, there's nothing wrong with this, and I recommend doing it in like the corners of the lip. You don't want to be following everything you put to a T. It looks fine, right? But it's missing something. It's missing like the energy to it, or like something to give it some interest. So since the lip is curled into your face, I like to add, get your rendering in there and then just sort of like darken it up like this. This is what I like to do. This is my personal preference. Bunch it all up like that. But then I won't touch the rest of it. I'd rather let coloring do all that, right? The chin here, again, you could do this route like that, and you can go like that. There's nothing wrong with that. It can tend to look a little weird, like hair. So most times you'll find too, a lot of artists, what they like to do with their rendering, or I don't know if they like to do it, but they always pick a side and go that way. So it's usually like left and right. Very rarely it's up and down on faces, unless it's like this line right here, like the cheek, because the cheek comes down like this, right? So they, in this shading, people might go like this, Might go like that. That's cool. Because what you're trying to do is just figure out, like, if this was actually shaded in, how much things are getting pushed into shadow. And it's up to you, even though, like, I just spot blacked is what I'd like to call these shadows, just quickly. It's definitely up to you for how much you want to put in here, even though it's there. And I mean, we'll do like a pretty drastic one too, just so we can spice it up. In the eye socket, I'm still like playing around with this. I know some people, they'll just throw black in here. Some cats like to like do a little bit of rendering up here, but I'm trying to keep it pretty tame in this one. Let's go in here. So I'll just turn this off here so you guys can see it a little better. So this would be what like light rendering would probably be fine with, right? Like there's nothing really going on here, but there's rendering there, right? This is what you look for? Okay, cool, good. So this is, you know, simple stuff. Didn't take much work. There's brain energy that's got to get spent to like just understand the fundamentals of it, right? And you will always be going back to fundamentals. You'll always be learning things, right? So keep learning, keep asking those questions. I'm actually gonna bring in the lines going that way as well, just to help thin that out. So that might be a style you like, or you might not like rendering at all, and you just sort of like the line weights, right? So what I'll show you next is I'm going to keep the exact same shadow, like where the light's coming from for the line weights and stuff, but I'm going to add a little bit more dramatic light, I suppose we would say here, right? So it's all in the same spots. The nose is going to have a cast shadow. It casts down, you know, onto your lips. Probably have your lips having a little shadow around here somewhere. Yeah, and I'm just going to bring up the shadow on this guy's chin. So that whole jaw's getting caked in shadow. A lot of guys, they like to have like that prominent jaw and that cheekbone. So we're going to put that in there too. Especially for dramatic lighting, I find always thinking about, okay, see how I'm rounding this form out here? This is like the cube that we just did, right? That's the side that I'm trying to think of. What was I going to say? I just cut myself off with dramatic lighting. I don't know. I don't know what I was going to say there. But one thing about dramatic lighting that definitely might help you out, and I did it, and I wasn't very good at it, but it's a quick way to do artwork. I mean, as soon as you have a general idea from it, it's very, I don't want to say simple, but you can start blacking in solid shapes. And you don't have to worry about rendering necessarily. You don't got to worry about a lot of things. As long as your artwork's sound, and you can get some pretty cool looks to your pages. I've recommended it before. I'll recommend it again. 100 Bullets by Eduardo Rizzo. Wonderful artist. Okay, so we've got his chin casting a shadow. And you can see him rounding around these forms here, right? Just to show like that sticks out like that. Okay, so we're gonna have that, and that's pretty much where we're gonna put our shadows in here. Okay, so we've got our line weights here. I'm just gonna go through the rest just to make sure that the rest of our what we want is still covered in line weight. So on the back of his head here, it's gonna get hit. Thinking of where the light would hit it, back here on the neck, and the light's going to come in. Connecting point right here where the chin goes into the Adam's apple, but all the under the Adam's apple is going to get hit. Again, the connection point. Excuse me. And what you're worrying about with these connection points are it shows that there's a form over top. Okay. So here's all dark, but like there's still a connection point here, and that just makes it feel right here. I'll put 1, 2, because the light's getting hit there. That there's form being pushed and pulled around. Okay, so have that. That's good enough. So next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make another layer here, and I'm just going to use. If you're doing digital, some people like to use the lasso tool to select where their shadows are gonna go. I like to carve out the shapes myself, unless I want like a very sharp point, then I'll use the lasso tool. So I'll show you what I mean here. So I'm going to use the little nose here that I had. I'm just going to carve out the shape. So all of this, I'm going to bring in the nostril this way. And that's where the cast shadow will be. And I'm going to curve it forward because if you grab your lip, right, there's a curve in there. So we're going to go this way. And I'm just going to put an X in there to black that out. That's going to be shadow. And you can tell I'm not one for oneing where I guessed that shadow would be. I'm just using it as the guide. And that's all this technique here is really for. And I actually do this quite a bit. And I find what it does is you're breaking down your thought process into stages. And for me anyway, it helps. It helps a lot instead of having to like just start drawing normally and then just going like knowing where to throw the inks. I think the more you do this, there's a lot of faces you might draw normally, like on your own. Like there's a style you have. Like if you're drawing 3/4 heads, you probably have I don't like your style, like a generic look for it, right? And when you start throwing in shadows like this, I find that it helps sort of break out of that default style you might have and sort of grow a little bit. And depending on the rendering style and stuff, all that stuff comes into play. So all this is going to get hit by lighting, all this. You can see I'm just cutting shapes out. That's all I'm really thinking about doing here. So I know under his neck is going to be fine. His Adam's apple is going to be covered in shadow, except the under part of the Adam's apple. And this side's probably, oops, we don't want that. We'll go this way. And then we can add our rendering on top of this. So let's get rid of that red. I know it's there somewhere. We can get rid of both of it so you guys can see it. So it looks pretty, you know, like ugh, when you're on there, right? So let's just select it up here and see how it looks. Just making sure, yeah, of course. I got some lines that aren't connected here. Just gonna hold shift and click just to highlight these areas so we can fill it all in at the same time. And I'll have to touch it up. Alright, and let me just bring in the other ones we had there. And this is really obviously sloppy, but the principle's there for you. And this is sort of like a, I don't want to say Magnolia look or whatever, because like you got to be careful when you go this drastic with shadows, right? Because like all of a sudden his chin's gone and things might look weird, right? Like this giant muscle that he's got sticking out. So I might just, you know, boom, let's just knock it out because it looks better than how it was, right? So I might just keep it that way. But the next stage here would just be to totally just start. This is where you would do the rendering, right? And this is where, like, we could try to go like a Finch route a little bit here, right? Where we could just really push this rendering. So I'm gonna keep this cheekbone. So you can see how in the middle here I went fatter, like thicker. Let me zoom in just to show you guys a little bit more, because that's where the core of that shadow is. You see how it's all dark in here? So I'm keeping it dark in that rendering, but up here is obviously light's hitting that. So it's going light to the core shadow to light, like it's fading back out. Add a little bit here to the eye socket. And we could even add some rendering to the nose. What line is that? What is it? Oh, it's just an effect I had. Okay, so let's erase that. Or not, I guess. Whoops. Right, we can even round it out a little bit more if you wanted. We do the same rendering style here. We'll add that. I always like just doing this with lips here. Top lips are a little Hey, bud. How you doing? You want me to draw you, big boy, huh? Hey, big kitty cat. Oh, big stink. Jessup says hi. All right, saying hi some more. Let's do some more rendering on that side there. And this kind of stuff here, we can fade back into the light just to make it look like it's fading in to the face a bit, right? Hey, big guy. And I'm still trying to follow the contours there, the grid that we have. Hey, big guy. Hello. I'll give you some pets soon, bud. I'll give you some pets soon, bud. Oh, big guy. All right, so hopefully you guys kind of get the point here. Let me just turn this down because there was one other question that I wanted to answer for you guys. Let's turn the gray off there, okay? So, I mean, it is, different. In the rendering, it's do what you guys want. It's always going to be everywhere, right? It's, again, just figure out what it is that you like in art. If you're just trying to understand, let's say, fundamentals, or I wouldn't even call this basics, but this is a fundamental that you'll get to, right? Like there's understanding shape and perspective and form. That's very important. Gesture, like there's so much that you guys need to know, that we all need to know when we're drawing, that it's at times it almost feels like you might not even be gaining anything, or your art might all start looking the same, or why do my heads always look like this, or why can't I draw in this certain angle I draw every day. Let's be honest, if you're drawing comic books, you gotta be able to draw a lot. So the amount of study you put in, I personally believe, and I mean this is coming from somebody that's not like Marvel or DC working or anything like that, but the amount of work you put into something it's paramount. But the amount of stuff you need to do, that we have to be able to draw, it's insane. I don't know how you would squeeze that kind of time into your day. So it's sort of like you have to break apart what you can do in a day. So sometimes you can only sneak in 30 minutes to draw male faces, and 30 minutes to figure out how to draw female faces, and that's all you get. So I think one of the true arts that comic book artists have that we really don't get credit for, at least people don't really talk about, is your ability to learn to adapt to styles quickly, right? And if just to clarify that and wrap my point up that I'm saying, there's, let's say you get a story, or you want to draw a story where it's not even something you have to make up. You have to draw cows. You have to draw cows. Who here has drawn cows? Horses. I haven't. So what if you need to draw these things, right? So you have to look at reference, and how you apply that reference and break it down and understand it is huge. So that's why, honestly, all the study you do with rendering and shadow and lighting, even a face, even a cone, even a sphere, even a cube, those are the fundamentals that when you look at a cow, you can break it down and go, okay, well, I can see a cube there. And yeah, it might not look as awesome as a person that can really draw cows, but I don't think that's the point. I really don't think that's the point of comic books, right? If you want to be an amazing illustrator, go into illustration. Comic books is mostly about story, and you don't need to draw everything realistic. That's not to say that you can't or you shouldn't, but it's also just to give yourself a little bit of a break. Don't worry if you can't draw certain things, or if rendering is troubling you. That's fine. The fact that you want to do it or learn about it, that right there is the passion that's going to get you to doing those things, I find personally. Okay, so enough preaching, all that stuff. Thank you. Okay, it did help you a little bit, James. Okay, cool, awesome. All right, so we got one last question there, and it'll perfect to wrap the show up with. It's comic book related, I believe. Jessup, fuck, you want attention big time, bud. Where is it here? Perfectly. What's your daughter's name? And thanks, guys, for coming in. And I like you too, because if you like cats, you're a friend of mine. Sorry if you guys can hear me drinking. I'm just sucking back coffee here. Video game related. So the Star Wars Battlefront demo tomorrow, guys. Anybody that's interested in that? Jessup. Okay, come on. All right, you're getting frisky. Come on. Oh, big guy. Okay, go ahead. I'll see you in a bit. I'll see you in a bit. Come on. Go ahead. Good boy. Thank you. All right. Sorry about the chaos there, guys. Okay, so let me just go back up here. Millennium Man is asking. Hopefully this works. Let's see here. It's a Dropbox link. Millennium Man's asking, I would like more tips on laying out a page. This is page 2 from the one from last month. Okay. Just let that download here. Callie? Am I saying that right? Hello, Callie? How old's Callie? She like to draw? John, curious if you kept up with Battle Chasers? Oh, daily. I know there's the contest, and I really want to do, but I I don't have the time, and as sad as that is, but it's amazing. Okay, I remember this. Okay, here we go. Copy image. All right, so let's paste this in here. I'll put in another one. Some of you guys and girls might remember this. If not, we'll quickly go over it. I briefly remember the last one we did. She's 13 and she likes to draw. Well, keep it up. What was I gonna say? Does she have like a? I know she's kind of young, but she might have like. Callie, do you have a Facebook or anything that you post your art to? If you do, share it with me on Facebook. I think your dad knows me on there if he's on there, or Twitter or anything, and then I'll share it for you guys. Okay, so just to go over here, what we were Instagram. What is my Instagram? Damn, I don't know if you have me on Instagram or not. You linked it. Oh, it is over now, eh? Okay. All right, let me just check this stuff out here, guys, real quick. Oh, cool. That Spider-Gwen's... Actually, that's really good. That's well drawn. Here, actually, I'll show it for everybody on the stream here. So this is Callie, her drawing of Spider-Gwen. Am I... Okay, let's do some watching. And it's been so long. Out of favorites. There you go. It's been so long since I've been on DeviantArt. Man, I need to get back on that action. Yeah, I hope you win, Inkbot. That'd be sick. All right, we don't have much time here, so I just want to excuse me. Oh, I hope she keeps drawing. Seriously, just keep doing what you're doing. I don't know if you even know, Callie, what you want to do with art or comics or drawing. Drawing might just be really fun for you, and you like maybe telling stories and stuff. But it sounds like you got a really cool dad, and as long as he's got your back, because he draws, so he seems like he's cool too, right? As long as you keep doing that, I promise you one thing. As you get older, one of two things are going to happen here, okay? One, you become immediately famous, or you become just crazy famous. You'll make a bunch of money, and you'll be one of the rare few of us that we all want to be. And I wish that happens to you. I really do. And the other side that might happen is your everything else in life might just be okay or it might be bad and stuff, but you'll always have drawing, and drawing will always be there for you. And that's why it's so special to me, and why I like people just drawing, especially I don't want to call you a kid, but younger people or preteens, teenagers, anybody, as long as you, or even if you're older and you just got into drawing, it might not even be relaxing to people anymore. But and I might just be speaking for myself, but I've said this last time, and I don't want to get all soft on you guys and stuff, but the idea of not being able to draw, that actually gets me really scared. So cherish all the time you guys have to draw, and just keep doing it. Even if you're setting goals for yourself and you're not hitting them, as long as you're drawing. I mean, like, just create, just have fun, struggle. Make it. It's hard work. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Art. I wish there was like a song. Art will always be there for you, or something like that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Millennium Man is saying, let's get back to what we're going here. So I want to quickly go over this and then just go over what he said really quickly. So in the last page, we were talking about staging the shots and where the camera was and trying to show what was the feels, what was the emotion behind the page and stuff like that. So we'll quickly go over this. It looked like it was a couple here. two ladies, and one of them was probably getting ready for work or something, but they didn't want to get out of bed. They were, like just an intimate moment there. And they got up, and the one lady, she opened up the box, and there was something inside the little chest there that was down there, and we're not sure exactly what that was just yet. So on the second page here, it looks like it was a costume of some sort. I'm assuming maybe they're a superhero. It looks like, and as you're going there, and you're looking there, there's here. Let me zoom in. You guys might not be able to see it here. So they're still condoling, consoling each other. The lady with the blonde hair is, she's ready to. Looks like she's going to take care of some business, and the other one's kind of like, be careful, be safe, don't leave me, kind of thing. And I'm getting a feeling here that she's pretty upset that probably somebody she cares about is going out to fight crime or do something around that. Okay, so right away, some things that I'll point out that are I'll call them red flags. And like usual, take all this stuff with a grain of salt. As long as you keep making the pages, nobody can really bust your chops. So one thing I will note just by looking at this is I'm just going to write the problems I see, right? No camera change. And we'll quickly go over these. No camera change. What's this called? What's the word called? Play staging. Can't spell. Those two are pretty related, and let's just see what you got in that. So let's go over what you got that's good, okay? Pacing feels good. I don't feel like I'm lost. I understand what's going on. Actually, okay, another one here. Another no-no is perspective. So pacing is good. I'm going to put lighting, even though the lighting needs work in certain spots, like the light and weight we were talking about. That doesn't feel like it's in a lot of places, but I do remember what it was like compared to the last one. So there were some good things going on here. Okay, so let's just go over why I was saying some of these things here. So if you guys can't really see the image, just let me know to zoom it in or something like that. I know I have a smaller screen here. So the first one is no camera change. I think that one's pretty. I'm actually going to talk about both of these at the same time. No camera change and play staging. So what I mean with that is you probably tell just by looking at it. It's as if the camera person was filming this like right here. We'll put Joey camera. Well, Joey two cameras because he's got to record a lot of stuff. He's recording the shot, but it looks like he's like right here on all of them. Right? He's. It's like a movie, which is fine if that's the sort of look you're going for. This is just always going to come from me. Personally, with comics, it doesn't have to be high action, high octane all the time. But even with movies, and I recommend looking at an artist called Brian Hitch. He did the Ultimates. I really love his artwork. But he does, and he's talked about, he likes that cinematic feeling, he calls it, from that movies give, and he likes that. He really likes that, and that's cool to like. And a lot of the shots are straight on like this, but there's so much you can do with this instead of just having it flat, right? Like you can still play with angles and see what's going on, and don't be afraid to just lift the camera a little bit. Just lift it up or bring it down just even a tad, and you'd be surprised what that can give you. And I'm going to show you really quickly like how you can do this relatively fast. And please, and I want you guys to do this too, and I always give you guys like, feels like homework, but there's really interesting ways you can study perspective without having to like grab rulers and like have pages taped on pages to understand this stuff. Just to have it like a fundamental in your head kind of thing, okay? So, and the play staging is like, imagine we were all actually, these characters are on a stage and we're just sitting there watching. That's like, especially the first two panels, I know what we're doing here. We're trying to show story. Like she's putting on her outfit and she stands up. That's fine. I feel like when you do back-to-back panels like this, it can tend, and it doesn't always do this. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't really care who does it. Even if it's like Jim Lee does it. I just don't necessarily like it. But this would look like if I was watching it as a movie and I were to see this, that's how it would happen. Again, that's what you're going for. That's a little bit more of a style thing there too, right? But if I did go see a play, this is how I would see it, I feel like, okay? And the perspective, there's not much craziness going on for perspective at all in this, which is fine. But the one that hurts it is like if you actually look at this last panel, it's probably the best panel of the whole page. because you have so much going on in there that's telling you stories, as well as it finally starts adjusting where the camera is. It's starting to go up a bit, you know? So yeah, so this is the big red flag here with the perspective that I didn't really notice right away. But if you look at this bed and where this character is, right? Like it's going, the perspective is 1 point perspective here, right? Like I can find the perspective point is like right here, and like all the lines are gonna come off that, which is fine, right? But the problem is we have a wall here, right? So if I was to draw this wall all the way through, this bed starts like here. So that means it's actually not even up against the wall. Now, not everybody has beds up against the wall, but usually a bed is up against a wall, right? And you might not notice it just by looking at it right away, and it's kind of like, it's a little weird. But because of this, this character here is huge. Massive, absolutely massive. If this character stood up, like her feet would be here, right? So let's just bring her out over here, right? So that's where her feet would be. So that means if she stood up, her knee would be about here, right? So if this is her next to Joey here, so that would be her knee, that would be her hip, that would be like her shoulder, right? This is how big she would be in that perspective. So that means where she is, she should really look like this. And this is going to get real messy here. Watch how big she's going to get. She should be something like this. Now, doesn't that feel like it just feels a little better? Like the perspective feels a little bit better? And the only reason that is because that's how the shot would be. Like that's how correct perspective would look in that case. Okay? See, let me just zoom in just so you can really see it. And I know there's art, like there's clipping and stuff. Just use your imagination a little bit there. But this is how it would feel, and hopefully that looks a little bit better. Now there's some cheats you guys can do, and I've talked about this before, but we'll go over it again because I know it's a complicated topic. But whatever your perspective is, let's just do again like a 1 point perspective. I'm gonna just do it real quick, and I ask you guys to do this kind of perspective with even your panels when you're doing your roughs. Throw it in just like this. Don't necessarily make your perspective. Don't grab like a ruler and start making straight lines when you're still in your gesture phase. Personally, okay. So I'm just gonna do the same kind of shot you had, just so you can see what I'm doing here. Like the lines are straight enough for me to understand where I'm gonna put gestures and things in, right? And we'll put you had it. I think it was off panel here. You can just see I'm just knocking out lines here, but it's enough for me to know what's going on. And this doesn't take like a lot of. You don't have to study this too much for that, okay? So one of the quick things you can do for hammering out a scene pretty quickly is find your horizon line and put something on it, and everybody else has to follow it. So what does that mean? So let's just say that same shot. What I will do is I'm going to put that girl in the foreground, except I'm going to put her head like right here. We're going to put an ear, right? There's her neck, and maybe I'm trying to draw her, like she would be the correct size. Maybe she's waving over. I forget what she was doing. Keeping her in perspective or whatever, right? And maybe we got the headboard here or whatever in the bed. She's got her legs over there. So what I've done here is now what all you got to do is no matter who's in this scene, as long as their head is above the horizon line, it'll always work. Okay? So let's just say she's waving to her girlfriend leaving there. So we're going to put her head above the line. See how small it is? So that means that the rest of her body's got to be in proportion, obviously. All right, so maybe she's leaving here and she's looking back and waving. And now that I see her, I can put a door. Right, we can go like that, right? Like that still feel like they're very far away, but this still does work. What is Lefty Inky? Okay, so these are a bunch of brushes I have. The brush that I downloaded, it was, if you guys look at my brush, it's tilted to the left. It looks like that. That's what my cursor is. When I first downloaded this brush, it was like that. So usually when, like a left-handed person, I find anyway, I like to draw with an angle that draws like that. And right-handed people would like to draw that side. That's all. I just put it there so I can see it. So let's just say there's even a third person in this. Oh my god, a third person. Maybe, watch this. We can put a head this big. And they're looking right at us. Real creepy. Ooh, what are you doing here? Let's draw them in perfect perspective. Look how like that all still fits in the scene. I'm hoping you guys can see that. I'm gonna do it one more time with just something else. Maybe let's pick something else. So there's a horizon line. Maybe it's a kneecap. I don't know. Right. So let's put a knee. I'm gonna just do cylinders here in her foot. Right, like maybe she's leaning up against like this or something. You guys kind of see what's going on here. We'll put the bed. So bed would be like that. We're not going to see all this stuff down here. I'm Lighting Man, exactly. Yes, where I learned this too is exactly right. Greg Capullo did this in in an old Wizard magazine. If you guys actually search on Google for Greg Capullo Wizard Mag tutorial or something, it should be in there. And since then, it's just helped me big time. It just makes staging things so much easier. Anyway, so kneecap here. So now her girlfriend's leaving, so we know a kneecap's got to go here. All right, so that's a knee, that's her foot. That means her hips are going to go here. And she's leaving. Maybe she's walking like this. Right? Do you see it? How it always fits? And again, you can even have a kneecap right in the foreground. And it always will work. Always, always, always will work. If you wanted to even change the... what's it called? Like where the camera's placed. Let's do this. Let's draw the bed. And I know this isn't addressing your question, so I apologize. So I'm just going to put her in here. You know, like I want to just remove myself from the scene a little bit. I have her like way up here. So what you do is you sort of figure out like, okay, so this person's hunched over, so it might not work as well. But okay, perfect, awesome. You posted it there. So count the amount of heads here, or how many distance are here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 heads away. So that means if I wanted her girlfriend back here, so let's say 1 head, 2 heads, 3 heads, 4 heads down like this. That means her body would go here, and then she'll be walking away like this into the door. Right. And it'll always work. So if I wanted somebody in the immediate foreground, right, like 1, 2, 3, you might only see the top of their head here, right? So what this is showing you, hopefully, is it's just a very quick way that you can just do this sort of stuff, and it just breaks down that difficulty that perspective can tend to have. All right, play around with that because it's actually very powerful stuff. So just to, I mean, as for the layout, again, there's a lot of things here that I think are fine. You don't really need to. You've got really actually. I didn't even talk about the good stuff you had. Let's go back to that stuff that I thought was good. Did I get rid of it? Pacing and lighting. Okay, so I see you may have done this in the last one. I'm not sure, but the lighting, guys. Remember we talked about this background lighting. So we've gone with this arc. We always read left to right, right? So we start here left, and that this frames them together. It's unity. There's nothing in between them that's like breaking them up. And actually, if you really wanted to get into some legit storytelling, which you actually did really well here. I'm not sure if you noticed or not, but you put something in between them. You put this costume. She's not putting her knee over here. She's not putting it on this way, right? She's still tilted towards this character, which means she's there, right? Like she wants to be there. But there's a costume piece here, and that costume is actually causing the conflict throughout this entire scene. At least it seems like that without words, which is great. This is an excellent job of doing storytelling. It's the conflict that's between these two characters, right? And then you can tell, again, even with the lighting, it's going on. They're not even touching anymore. Like now it's being removed, right? And now they never touch in any panel after, which is actually really good. Excellent storytelling. Even if they're not touching, like her arm's not overlapping her leg, there's no actual contact between the artwork, which is fantastic. And again, you might not even, this might have been subconscious, or you maybe thought of it. Who knows? As for lighting, you're still doing stuff to move me around the page, which is great. You've got the black line coming this way, so my eye has to go this way, and then it curves around. Really nice there. Really nice. And you can see even here in this panel here, it's boom, this sharp line comes right back. She's looking over here, bang, going to the next one. It curves again. Wonderful. You could even, I know there's light in here, but we could even just go ahead and just, oops. Oh, that's why, okay. You could even just go in here and just black all that out. You don't even, maybe not. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, no, go ahead. Do what you're doing. Looks good. Right? So you have all that wonderful stuff. Some things, again, just change it. The other thing, too, is if you look at the heads, all the heads are about the same size. That's usually a red flag for you, so you don't have to do all that. So this shot, I would probably even just, let's crop it here. So you bring that in just to really sell the emotion of the scene there. I really like this panel, but you could even probably just maybe give a little more action to it, maybe like that, or you could tilt it this way. You could even zoom it in. Right. So I would recommend doing that sort of stuff there. It's just think about getting the shots in there as well that you want to sell the emotion, and don't be afraid. Just zoom in. You don't always have to show where they're at. I mean, this panel here tells me everything, and it's 3 panels in, which is fine because it's not a challenging scene, and I know what the page was before this, so it still does that work. So, like usual, guys, I want to say thank you so much for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. And if you came in a little bit late, like Michael, this shows every Wednesday from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you would like to, if you're watching this on YouTube, there should be a little subscribe button, or just head on over to picarto.tv/Scribbles with Jonathan, I believe it's called on here. Could be wrong, probably wrong. Scribbles Jonathan, I think it's called on there. So go over there, hit subscribe, and we get notification in the mail when we hit live every Wednesday. And if you can't make it, well, thanks for watching on YouTube. It gets put up every weekend after that it's done. And one last thing again, just to wrap it up that I said in the beginning of the show, for my Patreons or my Patreon subscribers, or if you're not, you might be interested, I'm going to be changing and I'll be making updates throughout this month just to keep you guys on up to date with what's going on. But I will be changing up how Patreon works, and we're going to be putting up daily pictures, daily updates, and stuff like that, as well as comic progress and behind the scenes sort of stuff, and just like maybe stuff I'm struggling with, and pages, you know. You guys will be the first to see it there, as well as a once a month Patreon Scribbles show. So, guys, if you're interested in that, you can check it out. So, I will let you guys know. I really do appreciate all of the questions today. Really appreciate all the support, all the likes, all the shares, all the comments you guys leave it on YouTube. And, yeah, without getting into it anymore, thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys next week. Keep reading comics, keep making comics, and I'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.